pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will recognize any guests maybe that have come on. I'm getting feedback. Are you all hearing that feedback? Is it better? Okay. Can you hear me? Tim, I like that you are acknowledging. Thank you. Is Mr. Lee going to join us remotely or?
He's supposed to, and I don't see him yet. You might want to ask for, is Mr. Russ Lee online?
You want to go ahead and then we can come back to that?
That'd be great.
Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at that? Any questions? If not, may we have a motion to accept the consent agenda? We need a second.
Second.
We've had a motion and a second, so roll call, please.
Motion by Creason, seconded by Plattner to approve the consent agenda items as submitted. Adams?
Yes.
Creason?
Yes.
Janeski?
Yes.
Ledwig?
Yes.
I'll vote one.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the report on the agenda now. And first, we'll have Mr. Maynard's report.
Okay, just a few things I wanted to highlight. Thank you, Chris. Okay, hopefully you can hear me okay. All right. Try this again.
All right, you're good now.
Okay, try this again. Can you hear me okay? All right, thank you. Apologize for the inconvenience. So just a few things I wanted to highlight on my superintendent report to the Board of Education and to the community. First of all, just starting with the cash flow analysis. Just a quick update. You have that document available to you. It's available online. And just taking a look at where we're at this past month, I spent a lot of time with the bookkeepers. We went through our budget, just double checking some things. We've had an opportunity to be able to trim down some areas, mostly supplies and materials, mostly in the O&M fund. But one of the things that's happened for us in this past month is we've been able to receive extra revenues. So I'll talk about those in a little bit. All that to say that in terms of money in and money out, we're in a good place in terms of cash flow. Money is flowing to make sure that we're on top of our expenditures. And I think that the district is doing a very good job of making sure that we're doing the little things, little reminders such as when you leave at the end of the day, make sure you shut the lights off, shut your computer down, and those types of things. And over time, that's just one little thing we could do to help manage things a little bit better. So you have that. That's through October 30th, and we monitor that weekly. And I was just going to ask to see if you had any questions in regards to the cash flow statement. One of the things in regards to cash flow is that up until this month, we've been looking at, with our original budget, my projection was that we were going to take some pretty extensive hits at the end of the year based on extra expenditures due to the COVID situation. And after going through the budget this past month, we've been able to reverse that with the revenues. And we're in a situation now conservatively where I can see us at approximately 100,000 to the good. So that's really good news versus I think it was 178,000 where we were last month in terms of projections. So I've made those adjustments and feel a lot better about where we're at right now. We'll continue to monitor that, and we're going to use that as our guide as we move forward. And, I'm happy to be able to share that with us tonight. It's always good to give some good news. Also wanted to just remind you that the building level task force have been meeting in regards to our returning to learn. Obviously, even though we're in the midst of this COVID crisis and pandemic and things that are happening to everyone, and not only locally, but nationwide, globally, we still have to have some plans in place and still do some work. So a little bit later on, you will hear from Mr. Lee talking about the work that the high school task force has done at the building level. You'll hear from Ms. Acton tonight because Ms. Lepenis will not be able to be with us on the grade school plans. And then you'll also hear from Mrs. Burton on the junior high work that's been done. So I look forward to having them share that with you tonight. Also, there's a routine thing that we take care of every year. I've been holding on to this a little bit because of the COVID situation, but we routinely will approve the DARE program. So that's the Drug Awareness Resistance Education Program for our kids. Obviously, nothing has happened really with that yet, but I think it's good that we go ahead and sign that we want to participate in this, and then we'll wait and prorate the payment based on how much actual service we get. But I like to do that for the ROE, so we at least are ready to go when we can. Okay, so again, that is just a routine mention. I gave you some notes as far as just I'm trying to create some categories for you as far as IOT education, just some most recent things that are happening with the report that I shared with you a few days ago. Give a little update on the health department that we talk to regularly. As you know, information is changing and flowing continuously, so we're trying to do our best to keep up on that. And I'm trying to do my best to keep you and the community informed as things are coming forth from either the health department locally, State Board of Education, Illinois High School Association. I know Mr. Odell will talk about that a little bit later. We're getting information even as of today. Later tonight, we'll have an opportunity in terms of the bond resolution that we've been talking about since August. And just as a reminder, that is a refunding situation. We're taking our bonds, basically combining them into one, reducing our finance rate to save us money down the road to our taxpayers. Okay, so that's something that, like I said, we've been talking about for several months, and tonight's the night that we want to going to ask that you to consider that as an actionable item. A little bit later on, I believe Mr. Pistorius from First Mid-State is in with us. Just before that actionable item, I'd like for him to have an opportunity just to give a brief statement as well, give you a chance to ask any questions prior to any action on that, so that we're all clear on what it is that we would be doing for that resolution. I also want to give a quick update on the high school principal vacancy for the next school year. Our interview committee has spent a lot of hours of time together, and we had a first round of interviews. We have moved into a second round of interviews, and we will be meeting. We've completed those. We'll be meeting next week, Tuesday, to basically do an assessment of our candidates and where we're at that point in time. What I'd like to do, once our committee has solidified the top candidate, I would like to be able to have that person meet with the Board of Education, the full board, so that way you have an opportunity. I've got some interview questions that would be board appropriate, so that way you all know who it is that we're working with and who we're bringing to you, give you an opportunity to ask some questions of that candidate as well once we get to that point. My target date would probably be sometime early to mid-December. So we'll have all that organized for you, so that way you are involved in the process as well and know kind of where the committee is at on that. So Ms. Ludwig, you're on that committee as the board representative. Anything else that I'm missing you'd like to share?
We put a lot of time in, and I think it's been real worthwhile for the time that we've put in.
Okay, very good. Yeah, the committee is doing excellent work. I'm really, really pleased with the process, being very thorough, and we've got some strong candidates. The next thing I want to mention is the tax levy that's been on display. And last month when I spoke with you, the longer you can do your levy hearings in November if you want and adopt them, there's nothing wrong with that. I've done it both ways, but right now I really like to wait till December because you get more information terms of EAV, and the longer we wait, the more information, the better decisions we can make. And so that being said, I think last month when I talked to you, we had a 3.96 EAV projection. Sorry, get to that. Actually 3.27, and then by waiting, we received some newer information from our assessor, Mr. Matt Long, and he is predicting that Oakwood would be at 4.28% for EAB. So that's a considerable increase, and that's really, really great news for our community and our school district. Along with that, one of the things that you look at too is any new property, okay, that would be coming about, new construction. And for Oakwood, what he's presented to us is that he is presenting that $494,108 of new construction property in our school district. So again, that is another piece of good news. All that folds in to a better situation when you're putting together your levy, okay? That is figured in on the levy that you have in your board books. However, after the bond resolution tonight, if that passes, there'll be a slight adjustment, you know, based on the bond amount, okay? So I'll go back and do some more work on that, and we'll have a real high and tight levy presentation for you next month. So that's basically where we're at in terms of finances. I wanted to share with you that I have completed the process of review of all of our board policies on behalf of our school district. You each have packets, they're available, and I thought the easiest thing to do when I've done this in the past, if you tuck it out like you would in a classroom and share that with the board members and ask them if they could just review that section and bring it back, that will help us. I've got a couple more sections for the other two board members that are here that they could read, and then we could come back in December, see what questions you have. We can still wait until January to adopt. That's not a problem. We can take our time with this. But I just want to reassure everyone there is no rewriting of our board policies. It is just updating and getting everything clean and together and make sure we don't have any gaps or duplications in our document. And then it will be available to everyone publicly online, and will be more easily adapted to updating that as we move along. Okay? So that's a little bit of information about that. And I think probably if it's, oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Changes in mold, how do we know what changes to the policies in italics?
Well, that is a good question, Mr. Plotner. As we went through this, basically we went through everything as we covered it cover to cover, and he didn't present anything to me from the School Board Association in red as far as anything that was new. I can get that if that would be more helpful.
Yeah, just when that changes, I think would be really helpful.
Okay, all right. I will see if he can do that for us.
Great.
And I think it is good to review, the policies, on a consistent basis as well. I will check with our associate through the Illinois School Board Association and see if he's got something that would have something in red for any updates.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to you.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Okay.
That's been past precedent. That's what's been done.
Okay.
When we get the whole thing, we see that that changes.
Okay.
The context around what the change is,
Sure.
but it hones you in very quickly on what
Sure.
you're actually changing, and we can review that backwards, I think.
Okay. All righty. I will reach
I'll read every word of it.
I know, and I appreciate that. I will definitely reach out to our associate and see if we can get that for you, and I will follow back up. So I think probably this might be a good time. I know we've got Mr. Russ Lee is here. He's our auditor, and it's okay. I'll just go ahead and let him jump in.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you for, we'll kind of go over the audit and give you some highlights and kind of right along with what Larry was just saying about a lot of the finance stuff. So that kind of ties right into what we're talking about here. So Audit's clean audit. No findings based on significant findings or anything, and you're in compliance with the school code, state statutes, all that stuff. The report we submit to the ISBE is clean, basically, despite the fact that you had some issues on the accounting side with a few people going through the office basically last year. But still, despite that fact, we were able to get through it and get a clean audit, so that's good. I mean, Larry was kind of alluding to your numbers currently, and as of June 30th, they were pretty good, actually. You're on the recognition list for the state of Illinois with a 3.7 score out of a possible 4. So the state's recognizing you for financial stability and financial recognition, whatever that means from the state of Illinois, to give you a recognition for stability. I don't know if that means a whole lot when the state of Illinois is giving it to you, but basically meaning that you've met standards and met the requirements, and your numbers look good, your fund balances are all solid, so it gets you that. So that's the positive thing. And from a pure number standpoint, you guys got the report. If you got page 4. I'm going to jump to page 4. Start there probably, and I'm just going to look at some of the key funds. Education fund last year. Again, we're as of June 30th, $7,840,000 in revenue there on the first column, compared to expenses of $7,002,000. So you had an increase of $564,000 in your fund balance in education fund. So your fund balance went from 118 to 175, and that's a pretty healthy increase. You've gained prior to that last couple of years, you'd been running some small deficits, so that was a positive. Not quite at the 6-month standard that the state would like to see you at with cash on hand, but you're getting closer, which is good. I think kind of when we were talking about here, we'll kind of talk about general finances moving forward, why increasing that fund balance really helps. Building fund is probably the one that's probably got some issues there. You got $800,000 in expenses, $597,000 in income. So you ran a deficit there. You made the transfer out of tort over there, which helped it, but still left a little short. You're 211 ending fund balance compared to 802 in expenses. So that fund balance probably a little bit lower than you'd like to see, but not quite where it needs to be, but still okay. But it's the number of buildings you guys got, and never knowing what needs will crop up. It's probably a little shy of what it should be. And transportation is probably the other problem child, maybe. 575 in revenue to 606 in expense, so you ran a deficit there. Of course, you were shorted one transportation payment at least. That probably maybe the state's consistently been behind on their transportation payments, so that would be why that is. But again, that's a little bit low, but closer to the standard as well. It's almost 6 months, or just right at it, so that's good. So those are the 3 key operating funds that I look at. The good thing is, you look at working cash, you got $302,000 there, so you got the ability to have some kind of a rainy day fund. If you need it, you can move that over. You're going to talk about bonds tonight, which is perfect because I can show you in there where you got some bonding power if you need it. So you got some options to look at down the road if you need extra funds. And from where I took over, I think I've been doing your audit 4 or 5 years now. Your financial position has come a long way. I think the first year I did you were on a warning list, and now you're on the recognition list. So things have come a long way. You've managed your expenses well, and we'll kind of look at that here in a minute. But your fund balances have increased, so you've come a long way in 4 or 5 years from where you were to where you are today. So I would tell you something, that you've done a great job of managing expenses and managing the finances, because it looks a whole lot better than it did. Obviously, coming down the pike, who knows with the budget cuts that the governor's got coming down, what's going to happen. He didn't get his tax increase, so that money's not coming in. He didn't get his money from the feds yet, so that money's not coming in. So the first thing he starts talking about is cutting the budget on schools. He thinks he has to cut schools first instead of all kinds of other stuff that's going on. Is a mystery, but he does. So I would say probably the first place, I think everything I hear, I don't know about Larry, but I think any committees I sit on a couple of committees with CPA Society for schools. First place is probably transportation. I think that's probably the first catch that you would see is transportation. You got to figure out how to get your kids to school without them reimbursing you, I guess, is what they think. And then you look at evidence-based funding and categoricals. So that's why I think building those fund balance is great, because you don't know what's coming down the pike in finances from the state. So if there is some cuts, you'll be able to withstand them a whole lot better today than you could 3 or 4 years ago. So that's good. So that allows you some flexibility. You do have bonding power. Like I said, I think you got like 5.9 million available to bond if you needed it. So there's some flexibility there. So in the future, you are able to withstand some things and be able to handle some of the cuts or some of the things that maybe the state throws down at you. So that's the positive in my mind in those numbers. So that's good. And I think, again, something the last couple of years have been really good. So I would say overall, you've done a pretty good job of managing everything and managing that. And just to look at expenses, just kind of give you a heads up on page 10, instruction in the education fund, and that's all your teachers, your programs, everything you're doing, basically. That's the biggest expense that the district has, obviously. And you can see right there in the middle of the page, 20 was 4,950,000 compared to 19 on the other column of 4,549,000. So you only increased slightly, less than 5%, which the state says if you're under 5%, you've done a good job. So despite salary increases and health insurance costs going up, supply costs going up, your biggest expense didn't go up that much. And so that's why when you look at those fund balances, you're able to build them because you're not increasing, your expenses aren't increasing as much. Larry alluded to the levy and maybe it going up because of assessed valuations going up and things are going up, and your expenses aren't going up. So that's good. It certainly appears that you've cut out everything you can cut. You're running it the way it should be, lean. Because if you look on page of the education fund on page 13, you'll see the total expenses for the education fund, 7,275,000 compared to 6,693,000. So again, way down. Most schools around a 5%, 6% increase. Yours isn't there. So again, and as you look at the categories, I didn't go through each category, but as you look at the categories, there's no big increases. This year, probably the biggest increase was special ed, and that was because the co-op and the way the state handled that changed because you were getting more of the expenses thrown back to the districts, and they're having to pay the co-op. So that jumped up a little bit, but that was to be expected. So again, I just tell you that expenses, I think, look like they're pretty well maintained, and you have no issue there. I would say everything's within reason there. Administrative costs are down, and that's good. So just looking at some of the other, I think probably last year I talked about a little bit of this on page 31. This is your net pension liability that you're short. Again, that was one of the big things that the governor was trying to do, is cover the huge pension liability he's got. Down at the bottom of the page there, it says current discount rate of 7%. Your amount that they're short is $339,000. That's what they haven't funded for the Oakwood School District, basically. And again, that's just that and times 750 school districts, which is just TRS, and then you throw in all the other retirement systems that are out there, the state university and all those. You can see that there's a $1 billion hole there that's got to be filled. And even if they had gotten this tax increase, I don't think he would have generated enough money to cover it then. So again, there's a lot of talk about throwing that back at you, throwing it back at the local taxing bodies, making them pay part of that. So again, those fund balances are important. As you build those up, you got money to withstand it. You might not have to raise your taxes or do something to cover that if they do that. If they throw property tax caps at you, the state does talk about that still. You got the ability to withstand that, and the bonding thing makes even more sense now because of that. If they did throw property tax caps, it'd be good to have your property tax froze at that higher rate with those bonds, and even refinancing them, paying them back. Great time to do that. So that's pretty prudent at this point in time as well. So I would tell you that's a good thing to be. And as you look, since you're going to talk about bonds, there, it's good time to look at that. I said if you jump up to page 40, you can see this is your bonding limit. 5 million right at the top of the page. Your legal limit is 5,935,000. That's what you got available to you that you could bond if you needed to. So that's good. And the next page gives you your bonds that you're talking about refinance, and that kind of talks about them, shows the two bond issues and what you got and what's owed there and what the payments are. So that kind of ties right into what you're going to talk about maybe here a little bit later. So those are good things to look at and see. But that's pretty much it on the net number standpoint. Unless somebody's got a question, comment, I'd be happy to answer it. Finding wise, nothing real significant. We did have some issues because of all the change in bookkeepers and everything with getting things balanced. The account had been balanced for several months, but working with Dino on that and trying to get that straightened out. I think we got that pretty well straightened out, at least a procedure to get that done. And I think we got now in those positions that know what to do and how to do it. So that's good. I think we can rely on getting things more reconciled now than they were. The other thing with your IMRF levy, again, I think I talked to Larry about this. Your IMRF levy is accumulating a little money. kind of prudent to what you're talking about on your tax levy. Again, IMRF doesn't want you to accumulate money. That's supposed to be a restricted fund only for what you need, and you're not supposed to accumulate. Well, you've been accumulating a little, so you might have to ratchet down your levy just a little bit when you do your IMRF levy to make sure it's not too high. The other thing we found was some athletic deposits weren't really deposited timely all the time. For instance, there was only one deposit for all the football games, so not a big deal, but just we'd like to see that the money's not sitting around in a drawer or safe or something. That money ought to be deposited probably every week or whatever when there's a football game or a basketball game or something, so that money can't get stolen or used or taken out of there. So, and then the other thing was tort fund expenses that probably weren't tort, but not a big deal. We just moved them out and got everything straightened out. So not any major issues, but just some stuff that needed to be corrected as the normal case in most districts. But overall, despite all that went on in the county side, everything actually ended up pretty well. Questions? Be happy to answer them. Or did I stump everybody?
Any questions?
Mark, you can do any questions? Come on.
Typically, we have if we get found not as a significant fine, typically they're for the fact that county staff is really small.
Right.
Separation of duties is always.
Right.
Issue. I didn't see that anywhere.
It's not, because the procedure you're using with the people you have is sufficient enough to meet the standard. And I don't cite most small school districts because there's no way you can have enough people involved in the process. So why sit there and fault you for not having enough people in the process when it's not economically feasible, it's not financially feasible, it doesn't make any sense, basically. So why tell you that? So the state has kind of allowed us some leniency to say, well, with the procedures that got the people that got it, do you feel that the internal control system is good enough that it's adequate in making sure that everything's right? And we do. So that's why we don't give you a significant deficiency for that, because it's a waste of time.
As long as in your opinion we have control.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with what you're doing, with how you divided things up and do things. That's great. You know, I'm not going to tell you to hire 10 more people, one to open the mail and one to record it and one to take it in the bank, deposit to the bank. So,
You mentioned there was discrepancies in the tort fund.
Mhm.
Are you seeing any tax interest groups coming after? Still doing that?
Still doing that. That Edgar County Watchdogs,
Yeah.
they're big on that.
And I know they used to like to do that a lot because it was unpractical levy for torts, so people were abusing that.
Right. And people have quit abusing it, but not nearly, because there was a lot more of that. Now you just see people looking at it, especially what they look at is if you got a risk management plan to kind of go along with whatever salaries you're taking out. So if you're taking 20% of the superintendent's, do you have a risk management plan that says, I'm taking 20% of the superintendent's salary because that's how he does it? And then what you have to do basically is a time study. Superintendent keeps track of his time for a month and says, I spent 20% of my time on risk management. Principal says I spent 20%. So that you kind of
Is 20% the max now?
no, you can go, I've seen them as high as 30 to 33, something like that.
As you feel justify what you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the whole key right there. I mean, in all honesty, his job's probably 90% risk management and all, if you really want to get down to it. I mean, because that's basically all he's doing is keeping the district out of risk instead of certainty. So, yeah, you can go along with that.
Thanks, sir.
Yep. That it?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Maynard, anything else, or want to pick back up, or?
I do not. I think we're district coordinator.
Okay. Mrs. Kimbrough, are you on board with the report?
I am, and I really have nothing to add. The only good news is the iPads came in today, so let's celebrate that. Hello?
Hello?
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. I really don't have much to add. I'm just excited because the iPads came today. So That's it.
That's it? Oh,
I know
I'm
it's a
not missing
surprise.
you. Yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Just a few things to add to the board report or highlight. First of all, you might have heard we won the School Spirit Showdown. We just had a few little celebrations around, so we're pretty proud of that. One change we are looking at trying to figure out some way to do the senior citizens dinner. It's been a tradition at the school. Obviously, we know we cannot bring people in, so we've been discussing with student council, Mrs. Odell, the cooks, to try to figure out a way to distribute or drive through some sort of a meal so we can keep that tradition alive. So stay tuned for that. But every time we think of something, then we get new rules and everything. So we're constantly battling that right now. But we are trying to bring students back. If one of the charts that I gave you in the board report shows you how we are sort of leaking students out. So we have made a concerted effort to bring students back. Officer Don Milano and I visited over 20 students today to hand them materials or to talk to them about their grades. And most of them told me they would come back. Whether that actually happens or not, we will see. But hoping we can see an uptick in some of the numbers and get some of these kids back in the building. The main thing Mr. Maynard asked for me to talk to you about tonight is our task force reopening plan. The high school task force met twice. The high school was told our goal would be to bring all of our students in 5 days a week until 3 o'clock while maintaining our current IDPH guidelines. That would be mask wearing, social distancing, and et cetera. Try to get as close to that goal as possible. Maybe the 3 o'clock wouldn't work or whatever else, but we just tried it. The staff was very supportive of this, and we split ourselves into 4 committees, and they reported back. The first committee was called our Space or Rooms Committee, which they were trying to study ways to get more kids into the building and spread them out, keep this 6-foot distance, which we think has been really helpful in keeping contact tracing down in our building. We really focused on rooms that we thought were underutilized for classroom space, maybe rooms like the cafeteria or the stage or the library or anything like that. So they studied every room and tried to figure out how many students you could put in there. They also spent some time looking at the schedule to look at where problems might be, where classes are larger than others, and where those might be the classes that have to move to other places. They then studied those classrooms to determine what might we need to do to upgrade them, whether it be technology or acoustics or wall dividers. So they came up with some nice ideas about that. Our second committee was the traffic committee. We have been using this one-way traffic pattern in the school, which works great, and thankfully the weather has cooperated and continues to help us out with that. But eventually we know we're going to run into some foul weather and we're going to need to do something different. So they had some ideas about how to divide hallways. Also, we need to keep eliminating, we may have to totally eliminate locker usage, because we just do know that there will be, if we bring all 300 in, there will be places where students will congregate, and we have to make sure we eliminate that. They also talked about staggering dismissal schedules, whether from school or even just from each class, so that we don't have the full 300 in the hallway at the same time. Third committee was the scheduling committee. Dawn and a few others were on this committee, and they were just discussing a variety of scheduling options, the 140, the 3, a block schedule. Basically, they threw everything on the table. The problem with this committee is they need to know who's coming back. They can't really build a schedule to determine how many kids are in each class in what room until we know who's coming. So as we talked in our administrator meeting the other day, this is a bit of a chicken or the egg argument. We kind of need to know the plan to know how many kids are coming, but we got to need to know how many kids are coming so we know what the plan is. So we're sort of inching forward one step at a time, but really we are going to need to know numbers fairly quickly after Thanksgiving, I think, to be able to put together an actual plan what the high school is going to do. Because the other issue there is, as you know, Mrs. Ludwig, at the end of the semester, we're going to have kids that fail and are going to need to be put in classes to make sure they stay on track to graduate. Well, you throw those into the schedule, now we're overloading classes again. So just things that we are trying to be aware of and prepared for. The fourth committee was staffing, which we just tried to figure out better ways to make better use of the staff we have. For example, currently in like a 4-minute passing period, we have always asked for our teachers to step out of the hallways or step out of the classrooms, watch the hallways while still kind of greeting the students to prepare for the next class. What we have found that even just that tiny 4-minute span is a burden on my teachers, because now we're asking them to watch the hallways, but we're also asking them to clean the rooms if any is needed and to prepare for the next video lesson. So that's asking a lot. So we're trying to figure out, are there ways that we can move teachers around so that not everybody's got to be watching a hallway. We have only 1/3 basically of the students in the hallway at any time than we normally do. Also, we are looking at the student entrance and dismissal supervision. Are there ways we can move people around there? And also lunchroom supervision, which could be a problem. All in all, like I said, the staff was very supportive and put a lot of time and effort into this, but I think they ultimately came to the conclusion they would do this if they had to, but they feel pretty comfortable with our hybrid plan that we are running at the school. It's nice to get this ready to go. Maybe it's something that we do at semester, or maybe the semester doesn't work. Maybe we're looking at fourth quarter, or maybe on down the road, but at least they have put together a plan to be ready to go if needed to. So are there questions from anyone?
No. Any questions? Must have been a great explanation. No questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Odle,
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Well, the big dilemma is IHSA versus IDPH. Okay. As late as last night, as I was watching the news, and Governor Pritzker announced the Tier 3 mitigation efforts that he is putting forth, that will put a restriction on our after-school practices and the things that we've been doing up to this point. So right now we've had girls basketball, they practice tonight. The boys basketball has been holding off. We were set to have cheerleading tryouts and some other things that we felt the activities were going to take place this winter. With the announcement last night, we're putting all those. The word that the governor used was on pause. The IHSA used the same term. We're pausing things right now. So effective Friday, we're going to pause all of our extracurricular activities to see where we're at. Now, the IHSA has a meeting tomorrow afternoon of their board of directors. They had invited the governor and some of his representatives who have declined to come to that meeting. Obviously, they have other things that they have going on, but they're hoping to get together in the near future and try to come to an agreement on how we could possibly do winter sports. I don't have a magic ball, but my vision right now is they're probably going to delay winter sports until January and see where we're at. That's what I'm expecting to come out of the IHSA based on the press release that they gave last night at about 7:30. I still think the IHSA feels that we may be able to continue to practice. I don't know that that's going to be feasible under the Tier 3 mitigation. So I think that's an area that there's going to be some decisions. I talked with the VCADs via email, and we discussed on what everybody was doing in the area as far as practices. And pretty much all of the schools are going to pause their activities effective Friday in anticipation of the Tier 3 mitigations. So we're going to be in lockstep with what the other schools are doing in the area as far as extracurricular activities at this point. Some of them have went ahead and paused effective today. Some of them are going to let them practice on Thursday, but I believe nobody in the area is going to be practicing or doing extracurriculars on Friday. So that's where we stand. So basically in my report where it has the OHS athletic plan, you can throw that out the window, and we're going to start over and see where we can go once I get more information from the meeting on the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. Odle.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for him? Okay, thank you. Mrs. Burton?
Good evening. Our building also created 3 committees for our task force looking at return to learn for our second semester. One committee was building, food, and library. Our building, we identified areas that we could add additional seats. We opened our cafeteria to add 15 seats in there. And we looked at how we could possibly utilize our gym that would displace our PE. So we looked at that. Our only problem there is the staffing that we'd have to do. We'd have to be creative with those added seats outside. Every classroom has 13 seats due to the 6-foot limitation. Food, if we add more students, all we need is a week to prepare those and make sure we have plenty of food. Our library, we're going to continue to keep closed due to the fact that we don't have the real estate to quarantine books as they are returned. So we are utilizing the Oakwood Public Library to do some online books, and we're going to beef that up second semester with some book talks and some read alouds to provide some opportunities for our students. Our second committee was basically logistics of learning, how we're providing our education and instruction for students. And again, our goal was all in and adding more time to our special education students quicker. For our added time, we want to add those people. We looked at additional supports. We've added home visits for our hybrid and our remote. It's nice to go out and see kids and talk to them in their area and environment. We've included some team meetings where kids can come in after 2 o'clock or on Wednesdays for 45 minutes and work with their grade level teams. That has been very successful and has gotten some students back on track. And so we're looking at some of those ways to strengthen, building some networking with some of the programs we're working on together. And we've also included weekly progress reports for our remote students. And then our third one is the academic supports and adding value on how we can add seats and how we can add more supports. At this point, we also feel that the best bet would to stay on our hybrid. And 140, it keeps our building safe, but we do know we have room on our white cohort. Right now, we have almost 80% in person for the junior high, and I think that's great. I already have a verbal commitment by 4% of our remote kids that want to come back. So our goal is to fill our white day, to fill that up, and then continue to add value and continue to find seats to get us to that full. But at this point, we need to stay within our guidelines. And I think that if we can continue to add value, we're going to be able to bring more success to the junior high students.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Mrs. Acton with us?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Great. My camera isn't working, but I'm not too sad about that, to be honest with you. So if everyone's okay with this picture up, that's how I'll continue. So Mrs. Lepenis and I, we formed a committee. It had several different grade level members on it, as well as our special education staff. And we just chose to stay in one committee as our format. One of the first tasks for us was to really look at our classrooms and to see measurement wise, what could we do if we wanted to return all students into 5 days a week. Mrs. Lepenis prepared a report. I believe you all have a copy. We were working under the assumption that everyone would return. Now, I do know that there would be remote students. However, we wanted to prepare for the max because most of our parents are saying that they want their students all in. So if you take a look at it, using the guidelines that are currently in place, as well as what our teachers are saying as far as their union and keeping that 6-foot distancing, you're going to notice that the cost to the district would be significant, because at the bottom of that section, we would need to hire almost 10 new teachers in order to accommodate all of these classrooms. There would need to be personal aides hired, because right now we're able to use aides differently. And then also we would need to supply technology for our 6 new classrooms, because we would be planning on using the multi-purpose room, the gym, even the stage. We used every creative space that we could come up with in this plan. So for us, this didn't look very feasible, because although we all know it's a teacher shortage, coming up at this late in the game, trying to hire 10 people, the quality wouldn't be there. And so we would just be filling just to fill positions. So even if we could afford it, we're thinking that that's not a great solution. Our teachers, as well as Mrs. Lepenis and myself, we truly believe that in an elementary setting, if at all possible, we need to see the students every single day. So we came up with an AM PM schedule. So we would move purple into AM and white students into the PM group. It's not ideal, but we've kind of come up with a solution. Mrs. Kimbrough and Mr. Maynard provided us with some resources of other school districts using an AM PM schedule. We've worked with Shar and Sheila to kind of look at transportation concerns as well as food. And our purple team would come tentatively between 8 and 10:45. Our white team would come between 12:15 and 3. Our teachers would be able to respond to remote learners between that 3 and 3:15, as well as having Wednesday to work with them as well. We would put remote learners in either the white section or the purple section for teachers. Staff would still have a break for lunch. Their prep period would be still every day, so we're meeting those contractual obligations. There would be minimal extra cost to the district. We would still be able to clean because we have that big break in there. Shar has been wonderful on working with us on transportation, and we've found some ways that we think we can make it work. It still allows for social distancing. I think the biggest data-driven force for us is we have approximately 75 full remote learners, not learners that are quarantined, but truly full remote learners. Of that 75, we have around 50 to 55 students who are failing one or more courses, and they want to be here. We've done home visits. Our teachers have put in so much work in trying to get these students here and accountable, but it's just so much for an elementary student to be at home, fully remote learning. So we just feel like giving that AM PM schedule would allow us to bring more students back into the building for those that can come back for us. For food, we would not actually serve food at the school. Working with Sheila and the kitchen staff, we would send a week's worth of food home for the student, and that would include the breakfast and the lunch. But that way, we could use that time to clean and give our staff lunch. Still includes specials, and we would still be able to work out a schedule with Project Success in being able to use that program to benefit our students as well. I think that's pretty much the plan that we have in place right now if we are able to move forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Acton.
Thanks.
Mr. Richardson, do you have any?
I don't have anything to add other than my report. I'll just keep it short and sweet.
Okay, thank you. And is Mrs. Lunt on?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. The only thing I have to add, like Lisa was talking about, we've been working together with the transportation to get the grade school kids in with AM and PM. We've got a schedule that we think can work. What I'm working with right now is the pickup take home for the grade school. We're going to have to utilize all the buses for that one and for our AM route. Now, the junior high and high school runs, we don't have to utilize all the buses to get the junior high and high school kids home. And it'll be the same thing with the grade school at 3 p.m. So what I'm working on right now with that is cutting down the buses that we're going to need where we don't have the high school and grade school together. I've got a meeting with all my drivers next week, and I'm hoping to have all that to you guys by the next school board meeting. And that's the only thing I have to add.
Okay, any questions? Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Siddons, you said was ill today.
He was.
Oh, is he on?
He's ill, so I'm not sure he'll be.
He's not on? Okay, he's not on. Okay, does anyone have any questions at all? Okay, thank you. Thanks to all of you, and thanks for all the work you've been doing. Much appreciated.
I had a question from somebody.
Oh, okay.
He turned his volume down so I can.
Sure.
So I don't echo myself.
Okay, so this is for Ann, and I guess this is for all the principals. We had a question. It says, are you concerned about older students having to stay home to care for their younger siblings due to the AM PM schedule at the grade school?
We would have to take that into consideration if that's the direction that the district goes. So yeah, that is something we have thought about. We're already experiencing that right now with 2 of the buildings on all remote. We have noticed that we are down a few students who are staying home to watch out for younger siblings. So it's something we're aware of.
And we've addressed that at the junior high also. We had 2 out on Monday to help with siblings. It will just utilize our remote instruction for those students.
Chris, was there any other? That's it? Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Any freedom of information requests, Mr. Maynard? Okay. Okay. Any old business items for discussion? Anyone? Moving right along, and we don't need a closed session.
Nothing for closed session tonight.
Okay, number 11, consideration and action on the resolution First Mid-State current bond refunding. You want to?
Okay. I've been working with Mr. Pistorius. I think he's joined us by phone. David, can you hear us? You may have to, it looks like you're muted. I'm going to see if I can reach Mr. Pistorius by phone here, if that's okay. And then I can put him on speaker. Would you be okay with that? If I can reach? Mr. Pistorius?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I'm going to just utilize my cell phone here so that you can talk to the group. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay. You're on, sir.
Okay. Well, good evening to everybody. And what we're doing tonight is kind of going through the final step in the bond issue process. You had a 2012 and a 2013 bond issue that they were callable, and we are able to restructure them at lower interest rates, which will give the community some good savings. So it's a good opportunity here to take advantage of the interest rate. So this is the final step in the bond issue process. And basically tonight you're officially approving the bond sale. Some of the key points to reference in regards to this is that, number one, the bonds are sold. The final interest rate is 2.1%. And the original rates, they were out at the 2.7 to 3.8% range. And so we were able to get things knocked down quite a bit. The total savings to the district, and Larry, it's a little bit more than I said to you yesterday, but it's $464,213.07. Almost $500,000 of savings to the citizens. That represents 7.9% of the par value. And in order for me to even have a conversation with you about this, you had to have at least 2% of par value. So we're about 4 times that in total savings. The taxes do not go up. We stay in the same footprint as the original issue. It was originally scheduled to pay off on December 1st of 2031. That will remain the same. And basically, the only other thing to kind of share is that we do have a new call feature in this bond issue, and it is in 2025. So if there's a need to restructure and bring new bonds in at some point, that's the advantage of having a fairly quick call feature within 5 years, so that you can manage tax rates and so forth moving forward. So by approving the bond resolution tonight, this will get filed then with the county clerks, and it will replace the original bond resolutions that were filed with them. And this will be the county clerk's instruction as to what to levy each year. So again, this is the final step in the bond issue process. And those are basically the highlights of the issue.
David, this is Larry.
Yes.
Superintendent Maynard. Just a question I'd like to throw out there just for clarity, as you and I have been talking for the group, because we have a quorum here tonight live.
Oh, nice. Okay.
As well as we do have a board member that is with us remotely.
Yes.
And we are recording this as we're streaming this out right now. So we're covered in a lot of different ways to make sure that we're fully transparent with the work that we're doing on behalf of our community. That being said, could you explain the fact that when you talk about approximately $500,000 savings, $464,213.07 savings to the community, can you explain how that savings plays out? In other words, it's over time, over the duration of the bond. Could you talk about that, please?
Yes, and the way to maximize the savings is to have it, most of it, in that last year. And if you had savings in each year, you would lose quite a bit of the overall savings. So again, your levies are going to be very similar for these first 10 years. They're basically going to be very close to where they're at. But then in the last year, you've got over $460,000 of savings in that last year. And that's how we're able to maximize it. So that's the typical way that it's done.
Great. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
Does the board have any questions?
Any questions?
I'm just wondering exactly what you're saying, that in that final year, that total payment can go from like 672,000 to about 210,000. Most of it would be applied to that last year.
Yes, the actual levy in 2030 is $672,540, and the final levy is going to be $207,152.50. So yes, it's going to drop that $465,000 basically that last year.
There is no savings in the previous 11 years.
No, basically no. I mean, it's kind of like in the first year, it's showing savings of almost $1,000. So it's going to be very minimal. Bonds are sold in $5,000 increments. So you're going to see each year a levy that's going to basically be within $1,000 to $2,000 of where it was until we get to the end. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Mayor, do you want to read the resolution and we'll have?
I would be happy to. So I will read the resolution here. So this is a resolution based on what we've been discussing here and have talked about the last few months with First Mid-State current bond refunding. Resolution providing for the issue of general obligation refunding school bonds, Series 2020 of the district for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds of the district, providing for the levy of a district annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchases thereof.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to pass this, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Motion by Plattner, seconded by Janeski, to approve First Mid-State refunding as presented. Adam?
Yes.
Friesen? Janeski? Ludwig?
Yes.
Plattner?
Yes.
Motion carried by roll call vote 2.
Would you add Bradford to the roll call, please?
Oh. Yeah. So Brad, on this current refunding, item vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Any other new business for discussion? None? Okay. Our next meeting will be December 16th, and we will have a levy hearing at 5:15 that evening. So it'll be a 5:15 and then the regular meeting at 5:30, correct?
Absolutely.
What did you say? 16?
16th. Yes. We have a motion to adjourn, please.
I'll second.
Okay, please.
Motion by Friesen, seconded by Adams, to adjourn at 6:33 p.m. Adams?
Yes.
Bradford?
Yes.
Friesen?
Yes.
Janeski?
Yes.
Ludwig?
Yes.
Plattner?
Yes.
Motion carried by roll call vote.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.